Hey guys, OGalbina here, and today I'm bringing you guys another Draft League tier list video. Today we're going to be going over each and every fighting type Pokemon and kind of ranking their not only viability but also their value that they offer in the Draft League format. It should be a lot of fun. There's a lot of really cool fighting types that I love drafting. Just as a quick reminder before we go in, I'm not going to be ranking any Little Cup or NFE Pokemon that don't see any use at all. So I'm not going to be talking about Mankey, I'm not going to be talking about Mienshao. I'll tell you that right now. And I'm also not going to be talking about Uber Pokemon. Now, if there's a Pokemon that's borderline, I'll talk about it. And some Pokemon that are like, sometimes loud, sometimes not loud, I'll definitely go ahead and go over those Pokemon. But we're not going to be talking about Mega Mewtwo X, for example, because compared to the other Pokemon, pretty damn good, right? But yeah, pretty simple stuff. If you guys do enjoy today's tier list video, be sure to please drop a sub to the channel. At the time of me recording this, we're almost at 940 subs, and I would really love to get to 1,000 for Scarlet and Violet. We will be doing a giveaway of 2 copies of the game if we do hit 1,000 before then, so I would really appreciate it if you dropped a sub, help me out in reaching that goal. It'd really mean the world to me. But yeah, with that being said, we can go ahead and jump on into it. So the fighting typing is a really finicky one, right? Because it's not necessarily a required typing or anything like that. It's nothing that we need to draft on any team, but typically they're very nice. A lot of them offer good momentum, a lot of them offer good wall breaking capabilities, a lot of them have great offensive coverage between the stab fighting moves they get, plus usually U-turn and knockoff and elemental punches and things like that. A lot of them have really valuable secondary typing. So while it's not a required typing on your draft by any means at all, it typically can be a very good one. So we're gonna kind of go over those. Another Pokemon I'll be skipping Hisuian Decidueye, this guy, Hisuian Sneasel, just because we don't have any information on them other than what they did in Legends Arceus, but that's not really the same as, like, standard competitive play, and it might not translate as well. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it. First up, we have Primeape, a pretty underwhelming Pokemon to start off here. I am going to go ahead and put it in C tier. It's really not that bad. With access to Defiant as well as U-turn, it's a potentially really solid Scarfer, like a low tier Scarfer, in the sense that it really deters hazard removal. So if you're going for a more hazard stack centric approach, this thing can be really solid in that regard. I believe it gets Throat Chop as decent coverage to hit, sorry, I was looking up which typing I needed next. That's why there's all Pokemon types on the thing, because I didn't know which one was next, alphabetically. But I think you get Throat Chop as coverage for bulky Psychics, and that's going to be a big thing too, is having a way to push past your own checks, in my opinion, is really important. And Primeape can do so, I believe, with, Throat Chop is definitely a cool option. You can U-turn, you can even do cool things like Encore and Endeavor, but you get great coverage overall. The only thing that's just kind of mediocre is its attack and its speed. Base only 105 isn't the best in the world, considering the power creep that we've seen this generation, or over the last few generations. 95 also isn't terrible in the speed tier department. And again, Defiant's a great ability, but there's typically always a better fighting type to grab than Primeape, but if you draft it, you're not going to be, terribly off. So I think it's pretty cool. Next up, we have a pretty rare case for a fighting type in Poliwrath. What do I feel about... honestly, I'm going to put Primeape at the top of D tier, because while it's not terrible, I actually like a ton of fighting types way more. And it's weird because I like most of these fighting types. Like, it's such a fun typing to grab. I love offensive fightings. Poliwrath is a little bit different, though, because Poliwrath is actually typically used in a more defensive manner in the Draft League format. Now, obviously, it doesn't have any reliable recovery, but it does have a very key immunity and Water Absorb, which can be incredibly valuable against either Rain or Dracovish is a great Dracovish check as like a low tier check if you really end up needing one, things like that. It finally got access, did it get access to Drain Punch? It finally got access to Drain Punch this generation, which it's been asking for forever. It can bulk up, it can even belly drum, it gets Swift Swim as well, so I've seen some like weird Swift Swim Poliwraths, but typically that's not what you're gonna see. You're gonna see like really bulky, annoying, fat sets with bulk up, Drain Punch and Circle Throw and Toxic, potentially, like Toxic Protect is very solid. You'll even see special Poliwrath sometimes with like Scald as an option, which is definitely really cool. But you're going to be physical with like Liquidation Drain Punch most of the time. But it's potentially a really solid Pokemon, and it has good natural bulk in 90, 95, and 90. So despite not having good reliable recovery, AV sets are also pretty cool in this thing. So while it's a lower end C tier Pokemon, and it might end up even getting bumped down to D tier depending on what we see next, it's still pretty fun. Okay, on to more mediocre Gen 1 fighting types. We have Machamp. I'm actually going to put Machamp a little bit higher, because when I think of Machamp, I think of Conkeldurr, but not as good, unfortunately. That's really what it does. It's a ridiculously strong wall breaker with 130 attack and access to Guts, which is great, on top of Facade and a Flame Orb and Knockoff and Close Combat and Bullet Punch for priority and a bunch of cool things. The big downsides to Machamp as one that's very slow and it's not the bulkiest thing in the world, which can be, you know, pretty unfortunate, especially when you're chipping yourself down with Flame Orb every turn, as well as slowing your defense with close combat. But 2, it also doesn't get Drain Punch, which is really dumb to me that all these Gen 1 fighting types just don't get Drain Punch until the ends of time. Now, I know Machamp isn't in Galar decks, so that might be why it never got it this generation. It might have gotten it otherwise. And I do know that Pokemon Legends Arceus gave it Drain Punch and Mach Punch, which Mach Punch is the other big downside to Machamp. It doesn't get Mach Punch like Conkeldurr. So if it does get those things, honestly, I would put it in B tier. I use this thing in BBT, and I loved it. I thought it was so much better with Mach Punch and Drain Punch and, you know, being just an absolute menace in that, right? I think without it, it's definitely a C tier Pokemon, but if there's Conkeldurr there, please just draft Conkeldurr instead. But it's definitely not a non-usable Pokemon, you know? It's really strong. It has another useful ability in No Guard too, so you can throw No Guard Dynamic Punches and Stone Edges and things like that, which is always really nice, so definitely pretty solid there in that regards. Okay, next up, we have Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. I'm actually going to go ahead and put these guys both down here in D tier. I think these Pokemon are both really, really terrible. Typically, you see people try and shoehorn them on their drafts as like a low tier spinner, getaway hazards kind of things. Hitmonchan can function decently with that, but it always gets so chipped down. It doesn't have much defensive utility. It's not very strong offensively, and it seems to get exploited a lot. Whereas Hitmonlee is so damn frail that it's never really going to get that spin roll off, and you're typically going to see it in like more of an unburdened plus terrain or an unburdened curse set or something like that to potentially win, which they do have their matchups, and they aren't terrible, which is why I have it a little bit higher than Hitmonchan, but at the end of the day, they don't really fulfill the roles that I want from a strong fighting type, whether it be a really strong wall breaker, good defensive utility, and like natural bulk, or anything like that. Now again, Hitmonlee can set up and sweep and something like that in some matchups, but it's not really strong enough to like always do that, if you know what I mean. So, okay, first up, we're gonna actually have our first S tier Pokemon, and this might be controversial for some people. I know some people think G-Zap is incredibly overrated, but I love using this Pokemon. Fighting plus flying bleh, is an insane type, and close combat plus Brave Bird is ridiculously hard to switch into unless your name's like Aegislash, I guess. So this thing hits like an absolute truck. So you have that cool option, but you can also Thunderous Kick, which is a signature move, 90 base power, and always lowers defense, which makes this thing incredibly hard to pivot around if it's not a choice variant. Say you think this thing is going to be Choice Scarf or whatever it might be, you switch into your Fairy type, you get hit with a Life Orb, Thunderous Kick, and now you're in range of a Brave Bird because you're -1, and that's just not a good time. It's really not. So Zapdos can be an absolute demon in the right circumstances if used correctly. It has great natural bulk. It can set up with agility and bulk up. It does a lot of really cool things, and again, Defiant. This thing is great on Hazard Stat. Get up a bunch of spikes and switch this thing hard in on those defoggers if you're feeling aggressive and crazy enough, and you're gonna, you know, punch some holes and things like that. Also, Defiant being a good Intimidate deterrent, which I kind of forgot to mention with Primeape over here. You can't use your Landorus to check my Zapdos or, you know, I guess my Primeape to a lesser extent, you might be able to do a little bit. Because you're giving me a boost. You're not making me weaker. You're making me stronger, which I think is really, really clutch. This thing with a Band and a Defiant boost is a KO. And there's nothing your opponent can do about it unless you suck. So I really like this thing. Okay, next up, we're going to put both of these Pokemon up here in A tier. I love both these guys in Heracross and Mega Heracross. I've used both of these. I've used Heracross, regular Heracross, plenty of times. I've used Mega Heracross just once recently in a league I am going to upload a movie of soon, which will be a lot of fun. But I love both of these Pokemon. Now, Heracross is a little bit faster, and it has the added ability of holding like a Flame Orb or being Choice Scarf Moxie, so there's a little bit more versatility in regular Heracross, which a lot of people prefer. And it's usually, you know, an easy mon to slot in a team because it's also not taking up your Mega slot, which is really cool. So you'll typically see regular Heracross drafted much, much, much more, and Guts is a phenomenal ability. However, and while that's great, and I'm sure you guys all know what Heracross does, it also got Spikes as gen, which I think is a really, really cool slept-on aspect of Heracross. Well, a lot of the time you kind of want to just attack what's in front of you. There might be the matchup where getting up a Spike or two on an aggressive switch might be, you know, kind of the difference between you two killing and OHKOing everything and not. So I think that's definitely a cool option for it. But Mega Heracross is a Pokemon I've used recently, and this is Overkill the Pokemon. While it can't be Guts, Flame Orb, it does have base 185 attack, which with an Adamant Nature, let's check. 31 IVs, because I put it 0 for some reason. That hits 515 attack. Just to show you that I'm not lying to you, I'm going to put it on the screen. Can you see it? It's this little stat right here. This one. This one right here. That's its attack. That's Mega Heracross. So this thing is an absolute monster of a Pokemon. It is impossible to switch into it. Between knockoff and close combat, and pin missile because it has skill link, as well as bullet seed and rock blast and swords dance. A swords dance up Mega Heracross, 2 KOs or Okos the entire Pokemon game. There's no debate on it. So I think this Pokemon really rewards good offensive positioning and good offensive play, which a lot of these Pokemon do, but Mega Heracross especially is phenomenal at doing that. And I think this is really slept on, and it's not drafted as much as it really should be, in my opinion. So yeah, I definitely think you should give it a go. Okay, next up, objectively, Hitmontop. I gotta put it in C tier. This is another Pokemon I really don't like very much, in the sense that I think it has a little bit of Hitmonchan syndrome, in the sense that it's a little bit passive, honestly a little bit more passive than Hitmonchan if it's like an Intim variant. And it's a little bit more passive, and it's not as bulky as you really like it to be, but it's supposed to be a rapid spinner, it's supposed to be a defensive pivot, things like that a lot of times, or like a spit F pivot with an assault vest, and sometimes it can be decently solid at that. With Intimidate, you can be a sponge to both the physical and the special side with an AV set. And with Technician, you can be a little bit stronger with Triple Axle and Bullet Punch and things like that, which is definitely really cool. I personally just, again, feel like this Pokemon really falls flat when you kind of actually look at the calcs with it. I drafted a lot early in my career, and it really bugged me how little this Pokemon seemed to actually do. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Personally, I would rather draft Machamp or Poliwrath. I think objectively it's better, but I really don't like this Pokemon, man. I think it's incredibly overrated. Okay, and I'm sorry, Ant, for saying that, because I know you love them. Okay, next up we have Blaziken. Now this is assuming non-speed boost Blaziken. If it's just speed boost Blaziken, it's an S tier, because it's broken, you shouldn't allow it. If you're a Wi-Fi league or Showdown league that is allowing speed boost Blaziken, get some help. It shouldn't be allowed unless you're playing Ubers or S tiers. However, regular Blaziken is still a very solid Pokemon. It's really held back by that mediocre speed tier without speed boost, which is kind of the main drawback to it. But base 120 attack and 110 special attack with a fighting fire typing is really tough to deal with. Whether the thing be physical, special, it gets U-turn this generation. It got close combat this generation, which is great. It can really break through teams with like Swords Dance or even Agility or things like that. It can bulk up. It can do a lot of really cool things. It can even defog if you need it to. It has EQ plus Thunder Punch, and what's another cool coverage option? Knockoff. A bunch of cool things like that. There's really not a lot of things that switch in safely to Blaziken. Its speed tier just kind of lets it down sometimes, which is a little bit unfortunate. So I'm going to put Blaziken in B tier, but if it's S tier, if it's a speed boost, it's S tier, so S for S. But yeah, definitely a really solid Pokemon nonetheless. Okay, next up, we have Breloom. Breloom's going to go to the top of B tier. This is another Pokemon I don't typically see drafted, and I think I'm like the biggest fighting type stan ever after doing this list, because a lot of these Pokemon I've drafted so many times, but I'm like, I don't really see anybody else use these guys. But I definitely use Breloom. I think this Pokemon is really fun to use. Technician boosted Bullet Seeds, Force Palms, Mach Punches, and Rock Tombs hit really hard. Not a lot of teams can switch into those in conjunction with the Swords Dance or in conjunction with the Spore as well. Spore being a ridiculously spammable move, only being immune by, I guess other grass types, which you can actually typically set up a Swords Dance on and break through on your own, which I think is really clutch. So having that guaranteed Spore and that guaranteed Sleep on something is a really overpowered thing, not having to worry about accuracy checks and things like that, which is really clutch. As well as like defensive poison heal sets. I've run that plenty of times, like Leech Seed, Protect, Toxic, Drain Punch kind of sets. I've run Sub-Focus Punch, Poison Heal sets before. It's honestly a really versatile Pokemon. It can be really used well if positioned well. Now, it's also a very good edge quick resisting both moves, which not a lot of Pokemon do, which is, again, good defensive utility. Now, it doesn't have the highest natural bulk, and it doesn't have the greatest speed tier, which really holds it back. It's either a little bit faster or a little bit bulkier. It'd be an insane Pokemon. Unfortunately, it gets neither of those, but it has a really sky-high attack stat, and in the right matchups, if built and EV'd correctly, it can be pretty solid. I really enjoy using Breloom, and I try and fit it on as many teams as I can, because it's a lot of fun to use, and it's really annoying for other people to prep for. Okay, next up, we have a hot take. Now, keep in mind, when I do these lists, I am talking about them with their inherent value at what you pick them up at, right? So, something like, again, these are two random Pokemon. Maybe I have Tyrogue in S tier, even though Sneasel is better, and I have Sneasel in B tier because I think Tyrogue at its price point is more valuable than Sneasel at its price point, right? So it's kind of evaluating how valuable I think these Pokemon are, if that makes any sense. And Hariyama, I think, is incredibly valuable for the price point that it is typically at. This thing is phenomenal as that low tier tank. This thing with an Assault Vest and Thick Fat is really hard to kill. It's hard to 2-hit KO, honestly, with that fat, meaty HP stat. What is it? Hariyama. Does that? 144 base HP, so you only have 60 in your defenses, but you can really just fully invest in those very easily and lose some pretty insane hits, especially with getting that fire and that ice resistance with Thick Fat. You have Guts as an ability, so you can be Flame War Guts Hariyama and just nuke things under Trick Room especially. You can be Sheer Force Hariyama and get plenty of Sheer Force boosted moves just due to your pretty nasty coverage. You get the Elemental Punches as well as Heavy Slam and Bullet Punch for priority, which is great. You even get Belly Drum if you want to beat on your belly and, you know, sweep through someone that way. I really like Hariyama. I think with an Assault Vest especially, it's really, really annoying and tough to beat in the soft checks and like blanket checks so much of the game for a really, really cheap price point. And I think that's incredibly valuable. Way more valuable than anything in here in C tier for me. So while it's probably going to be at the bottom of B tier, I would draft Hariyama over a lot of these fighting types that are typically going to be higher than it in a heartbeat. I probably wouldn't draft really any of these. Maybe Machamp if it gets its PLA buffs, but it'll probably be B tier if that's the case. So yeah, that's Hariyama. I think it's great. I think people sleep on it and should give it a shot more. Okay, next up we have Medicham. I'm going to go ahead and put Medicham in C tier. There's actually a Pokemon I really like, and because I'm also going to put its Mega in S tier, and we can kind of talk about both of them. They're ridiculously strong. That's what they do. They come in and they click buttons. Fighting plus Psychic is a ridiculous offensive typing, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Mega Medicham is so good because it has a base 100 attack set, so if you max it out, put it at Adamant, it hits 328. Decently strong, but then when you factor in Pure Power, we double that stat. We don't double the base attack, we double the stat. And what? I can't do math. 656, I think, is what that comes out to. It comes out to a really big number. And because of that really big number, it kills everything. Really the only thing that kind of switches into Medi is like Fat Psychics, but even then, a lot of them just get 2-hit KO'd after hazards and high jump kick and things like that. And a lot of them, 99% of them actually get 2-hit KO'd by double edge after hazards, which is a really cool option. You can baton pass around, you can fake out and bullet punch and just priority things because they're so damn strong. You can, did I say baton pass? I think I did. You can bulk up. You can be a fat bulk up recover. Medi, my most embarrassing loss, I think, early in my draft career, I was playing in an old TTM tournament, and if you don't know what those are, you are young. And I'm young. I haven't been playing draft as long as a lot of people, but back in the day, TTM used to run tournaments, and I was playing in one of them. I forget which one it was. It was like spring of the summer one. I forget. And I was playing against someone, and I had a Mew and a Mega Scizor on my team, and I was like, word, I got a good Medi matchup. Mew's typically one of the best checks, and then Mega Scizor can come in and always, you know, soft check it or revenge it with a bullet punch after it gets a little weakened. And I was like a fat stall breaker Mew with Will-O-Wisp. I burned the Medi and I bulked up. I'm like, that's fine, whatever. And I start like seismic tossing it down or something like that. And it gets really low and it starts clicking recover. And I'm like, this isn't good. But even if it gets up to +6, I should be fine. And then the Medi clicked Facade and O-code my Mew. And I went, damn, I lose to this. Oh wait, I got Scizor. It's fine. When the Scizor died to a Fire Punch. And that was the game. I lost. So that was probably the most embarrassing game I've had. It shows a Medi. I've seen very, very bulky Medi sets pull off some annoying things, so it's a great Pokemon. The reason regular Medicham is a lot lower is because, one, it's not as strong on his base, what, 80 to 60 attack, so 40 whole points lower. What, with an Adamant Nature, you hit 240, which opposed to 328 is a lot weaker, obviously, and you have a much worse speed tier and base 80, so that's why it's a lot worse, obviously. It's really not that fast, and it's really not as strong. It's still very strong, actually, and I've drafted it regular before. It's really not that bad, but it's definitely not as good as Mega Medi, and if I'm drafting one of them, I'm probably drafting Mega Medi. It's honestly one of my favorite Mega Pokemon to use in the format if you haven't used it already. Okay, next up, we're going to put Infernape here at the top of A tier. Everybody's favorite firefighting starter, and it's probably the best one in the Draft League format, provided we're not allowing Speed Boost Blaziken, which again, we're not. Kind of the picture of like offensive versatility, right? You have a great base 108 speed chain, then 104 on both of your attacking stats. You could be a great Scarfer. You're with a band. I've seen Spexate put in work. You can be obviously a great Scarfer, great band, great Specs. Mixed Life Orb is a demon. Nasty Plot, Swords Dance, Bulk Up, Flame Charge, Stealth Rocks. You get Slack Off for the weird Scizor matchups. This thing is really, really good offensively. It gets fast Taunt. It gets fast Encore, which is another really cool option. This thing can honestly have a lot of great utility with its speed tier. I've seen Fat Ape with Wisp Slack Off do work, like I said. It does well when you set up, it does well when you're Scarf. Honestly, it's a kind of one of the first Pokemon I think of when I think of Choice Scarf. So it's a great Pokemon, and it's really strong offensively. It's a great mon. Okay, next up we have Megalop, and I'm really struggling on where to put Megalop. I think objectively, I have to put it up here, right? Here in S tier with Medi. I'm trying to think of how many S tier Pokemon I'm going to have left. And in my head, 1, 2, I think I'm only going to put 2 up there. So I think that this is a fine number of S tiers. There's going to be a little bit more S tiers this time, because I really love offensive fighting. It's one of my favorite things to do. Megalop is really, really good. Now, obviously, it got nerfed in Generation 8, losing Return and Frustration as its most reliable normal stab. But you still get Facade, you still get Mega Kick and things like that, which is great. And you got a couple really good buffs in getting close combat over High Jump Kick, which is really nice. Not having to risk misses anymore, depending on the matchup. And it also got U-Turn as a damaging priority move, especially considering a lot of the time Bulky Psychic is going to be coming in on lot. So you can U-Turn out, chip them down in the range, double edge the next turn, something like that. Which it does also get. Oh, it doesn't get double edge. It got an MPLA, so I really hope it keeps it in regular, because that thing would be a demon. But yeah, Megalop is ridiculously strong. Normal fighting plus Scrappy, which if you don't know, Scrappy not only makes you immune to Intimidate this generation, but also lets you hit Ghost types with your normal fighting moves. So, with no immunities in play, normal fighting has no resistances. There's nothing that can just resist both of those moves. So you have perfect coverage. You have a pretty solid attack stat 136 and a really solid speed stat 135. So you're gonna outpace a lot of things. Fake Out plus Quick Attack is, a really annoying potent combination of priority. And again, you get great coverage overall, but typically you're only going to need normal and fighting, then you turn around, you fake out, and you're just a general nuisance. You can throw off fast encores. You can also be like weird Thunder Wave sets, like a Triple Axle, which is another really cool option for it. So it gets a lot of really cool things. It's a really strong Pokemon. I like it a lot. I know a lot of people don't like it a lot, but I think it's definitely worthwhile picking up, at least. Okay, next up, we're going to have Lucario. I'm going to put Lucario behind Hariyama. This is kind of a hot take, too. Lucario offensively has a lot of potential. Steel Fighting with its coverage and its mixed attacking stats are great. But the only thing is it has 0 to little defensive utility. It's also probably doubling up as a Steel type, maybe even the Steel type on your team, which isn't great. It's really hard to position in, and it's really slow, as well as it really struggles to find setup opportunities. Now, it has great priority options in E-Speed, Bullet Punch, and Vacuum Wave, and it gets great setup options in Swords Dance, Agility, and Nasty Plot, as well as Bulk Up, but you're typically not going to run that. So it could definitely be solid in that, right? And Steel plus Fighting is a really good, stab combination offensively. It just kind of falls up flat in the bulk department and the speed department for me. But if you can position it well offensively, you can do well with it. It's not a bad Pokemon in the slightest. It's just going to be B tier because I feel like it requires a little, or it's going to be at the bottom of B tier because I feel like it requires a little bit more work than it's worth in a lot of instances. But I've definitely drafted it and made it work, So we're going to have it here in B tier. Next up, we're going to move back down to C tier. And we're going to go ahead and put Toxicroak down here. I'm going to put Toxicroak here in C tier because I think it's really hard to fit on a lot of teams. But I think it actually has a really solid niche on Rain with Dry Skin being a water immunity, which is really, really solid. It really bullies Pokemon like Toxapex, which is always really fun to see. It gets cool setup options, again, a lot like Lucario and Nasty Plot and Swords Dance and Bulk Up. It gets Vacuum Wave and Sucker Punch for priority options. It gets Knockoff, which is a really cool option for it, especially for a Pokemon that has a 4 times resistance or weakness to fighting. So it can be pretty okay, but again, not very bulky, not very strong, so it's gonna go down here in C tier, unfortunately. Okay, next up we have some really good Pokemon. We're gonna go ahead and put one really good Pokemon and then its normal form. We're gonna have Mega Gallade, who's gonna go to the top of S tier, and then Mega Gallade. Mega Gallade is a lot like Medicham and regular Mega. It's not as bulky, it's not as strong, it's not as fast. It's just not as good. Mega Gallade is a different story. Base 110 speed, base 160 attack, I think. Let's look. Gallade Mega. Yep, 165. I'm sorry, Gallade. But that plus Psychic Fighting coverage, as well as Knockoff and X's to hit bulky Psychics, as well as Swords Dance and Bulk Up and Shadow Sneak and Leaf Blade is a cool option. You get Ice Punch and Triple Axle. You get Thunder Punch, like different cool element, all the elemental punches, obviously. You can be Fast Encore. You can be a Taunt Gallade. You can do a bunch of crazy things, but really you're gonna come in, you're gonna 2-hit KO and OHKO everything. And this Pokemon's amazing at it. I've used Mega Gallade on the channel before in SBT, and it was amazing. I love this Pokemon. I think it's phenomenal. It's really easy to build around. You come in, you click a button, and you kind of just win the game a lot of times. So I think it's definitely worthy of our top S tier spot for now. Who knows? That might change here soon. Okay. Next up, we have Gen 5. We have our Gen 5 starter in Bernardo. the Emboar. I'm going to go ahead and put it down here. I think Emboar has some pretty phenomenal offensive potential. I know Kurt really likes it. I know John really likes it. So two buddies of mine that are big Emboar vouchers. 123 base attack with Reckless, as well as Flare Blitz and Wild Charge and Head Smash and things like that. This thing is really strong with the band. It basically 2 KOs or OKOs everything. But again, the main downside to it, it's not very bulky. It has a decent HP stat in 110, but pretty mediocre defense in 65, and a pretty terrible speed stat in 65. So even with the Scarf, you're not outspeeding everything, and you're losing out on a lot of power. And if you're not Scarf, you really can kind of bully fat, but you struggle with a lot of other things. I think Assault Vest Emboar is also a really cool option. It gets cool priority in like Sucker Punch, I believe, as well. Yeah, which is definitely really cool. So it's really not the worst thing in the world. Even Bulk Up, which is pretty cool. I wish it got Drain Punch. I think that would be a cool option for it, but it does not. It gets Brick Break as secondary coverage, as well as Superpower. So no close combat, or no Drain Punch. So its Fighting Stab is a little bit lacking, which is unfortunate on the video for fire starters. But it's still a very strong Pokemon. There's a lot of fighting types I would personally rather draft above it. Okay, Gurdurr. We have an NFE Pokemon that we get to use. Gurdurr, I'm going to go ahead and put here in C tier. I actually really like Gurdurr a lot. I think it's a really solid Pokemon for its price point. With an Eviolite, it's very bulky. It gets Drain Punch for decent recovery options as well. If you got Sheer Force or Iron Fist, a lot like Conkeldurr. And it kind of is just a mini Conkeldurr, maybe used a little bit more defensively, but it's a great pivot. Kind of sucks to have your fighting type weak to knockoff in the sense that you just don't want to lose your Eviolite, but it's still very strong. You gotta be careful with your status because you have an Eviolite Guts Burnt Gurdurr in your face and you're gonna have a bad time. So that's definitely a really cool option for it as well. It can bulk up and win too. Okay, Conkeldurr. We're gonna move Conkeldurr right up here. I think Conkeldurr is an amazing Pokemon. I recently used it in pack. Again, it has Guts, which typically you're just going to run Guts Flame Orb and just OHKO or 2-KO the entire game if you can offensive position well. It's decently bulky. It's good with an AV. It can do a lot of really fun things with that. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Machamp. Conkeldurr is Machamp, but just a lot better and a lot bulkier. A little bit slower, but a lot better in my opinion. And it gets Mach Punch for great priority to pick off offense, which is awesome for a slow Pokemon like Conkeldurr. Okay. Now we have some shitters, unfortunately. We're going to go ahead and put Sawk and Throh. I know a lot of people really like these Pokemon. I think they're decent. Throh is really kind of bulky. Honestly, you get to move down. I've decided. These guys are probably better, but I don't want to put them in C tier because I don't think they're that good. And looking at the rest of the C tiers, Poliwrath probably goes down. Okay, but regardless, Sawk and Throh, pretty solid Pokemon. Throw is going to be decent defensively. It gets Guts, which is a cool option, but it can also be Assault Vest. Bulk Up sets are really solid. It's very annoying. I used it in BBR, and I think I swept Magnitude with it, which was a pretty fun time, but it's not the best Pokemon in the world. Sawk, a little bit more offensive. It's a good Scarfer with Mold Breaker. Gets good offensive coverage, better speed tier, a little bit strong, or decently strong, a little bit strong. It's a little bit strong. And it also gets access to Sturdy, which is really cool with heavy duty boots in a generation where you can guarantee you have that Sturdy up so that you can always prevent something or stop something from sweeping you, if, the situation arises. So it's a pretty great Pokemon, in that sense. That's a pretty great aspect to this Pokemon, which is cool. Okay, Scrafty. Oh man, more hot takes from Owen. Scrafty all the way up in B tier, but Emboar is usually more expensive, and so is Hitmontop. Yeah, but Scrafty is the GOAT. I love this Pokemon and the utility that it often offers. Between Shedskin, Intim, and Moxie, it has 3 amazing abilities. It's great with an AV, it's great with Breast Talk, it's great with a Bulk Up set, it's decent with a Dragon Dance set if you're playing slower teams, and it's just an overall big nuisance. It's a great Ghost Resist, it's a great pivot. I really love Scrafty. I've drafted it a million times on the channel, and I'm sure you guys have seen it plenty, but I really like this Pokemon, and I think it's awesome. So it's going to be up here in B tier for me. Alongside it in B tier, though, we are going to have Mienshao. I'm going to go ahead and put Mienshao at the top of B tier, because solely, it has the best ability in the game in Regenerator. It's decently fast in 105, as well as getting access to U-turn, so this thing can kind of come in and U-turn cycle. It's really great with a lot of Pokemon and a lot of cores. I know my buddy Kaz absolutely loves this Pokemon, and I don't blame him. I think the day of recording this, I actually got smashed by a Mienshao, or didn't get smashed. I lost to a Lastmon Mienshao in Trick House the other night, 1-0. Or earlier today, so I guess it'd be the other night for you guys, because I'm opening this tomorrow morning. But regardless, it's really solid with a regen. It's a great Scarfer. It's great with a Life Orb, kind of making up for its, or giving even more power with 125 base attack, which is great. It got close combat this gen, so we don't have to worry about missing high jump kicks. We U-turn, we knock off with Poison Jab, a bunch of cool options like that. We can even Swords Dance up, which is awesome. Sorry, I'm getting a little short of breath because I'm talking really fast this video, because I gotta go to bed soon, because I work at 9 a.m. And we're only in Gen 5, so we're gonna have to... But Gen 6 is short. Regardless, though, you can even run Reckless sets with Reckless Banded High Jump Kick. I had that happen to me like a month or two ago in a game, and it like O-code my entire team, which wasn't cool. I ended up beating it, but it was killing something every single time it came in, and I did not like that part. So yeah, it's a decently solid Pokemon overall. Okay, we're gonna rank these four pretty fast right here. I'm gonna do this one. Cobalion. This thing, it's a little bit too passive for my liking. I'm gonna put it at probably B tier. It's not very strong, but it has a very good typing. It's a very good defensive pivot. It's a great rocker, so I think it deserves this tier. Next, we have Terrakion. I'm gonna put Terrakion begrudgingly at the bottom of A tier. Now, I personally don't like using it, but I've had some success with it, and I see a lot of other people have success with it. Rock plus Fighting is a ridiculous offensive typing, and if positioned well, and you're the right set and the right item in that matchup, this thing can go crazy. It's just really tough finding that. I feel like Scarf always misses out on KOs. Band or Life Orb always gets outspent and revenged, and it's really hard to find like the sweet spot between those and know which shit to bring a lot of the time, at least for me. So it might be a personal thing where I don't like Terrakion very much. Next up, we have Virizion, who is unfortunately just the worst out of these guys. I'm gonna go ahead and put it... I think this is honestly fair right here. In C tier. It's a good Spadef wall, so the opposite of Cobalion, but it's not very great from your grass type that you typically want to resist ground, as well as Stone Edge in this thing's case, because it's a grass fighting type, so it should be a good edge quick resist, but it actually ends up just like not resisting ground at all when you actually build with it, which is a little bit unfortunate. It can Swords Dance, it can Calm Mind. It's a little bit more setup oriented. I feel like it's supposed to be played in the sense that it's supposed to set up and win, but it's often not strong enough to do so. I'm really not a big Virizion guy. I've trashed it a couple times and I really don't like it. Next up, Keldeo. This is a Pokemon I like. We're going to go ahead and put Keldeo here at the top of A tier, actually. This thing, with Water plus Fighting Stab, which is really, really annoying to switch into, is really strong. It's great with the specs. AV Keldeo is a really slept on set. Calm Mind is great. Subtoxic Keldeo is a demon to deal with. I really like this Pokemon. It gets Taunt, it gets Flip Turn for Momentum, which is awesome as well. And Water plus Fighting just hits so many different things very, very hard, and hits a lot of teams really, really hard. And it's just a great teammate and a great Pokemon. We're going to skip Mellow to Pirouette because it's not really a fighting type in my opinion. We can kind of move on to the Gen 6 fighters, which is only 3 of them, which is interesting. And we don't even have that many Gen 7 ones, so we're kind of speeding along. There's a lot more early Gen fighting types. This is kind of what I'm noticing right now. Sorry. It's been a minute. Okay. Next up, like I said, we have Chesnaught. If this is pre-COVID Chesnaught, S tier. But this is we live in a post-COVID Chesnaught world, so I'm going to go ahead and put him in C tier. I'm actually going to put him at the top of C tier. He's a decent Fizz-Duff wall. He can be decently strong. I know it can bulk up and things like that, and Grass plus Fighting is still pretty decent typing. It's kind of the opposite of Virizion, since it has really good Fizz-Def, pretty bad Spud-Def, but Spiky Shield plus Leech Seed is a really annoying combination. It can be spikes. It can also be Sub-Salic Belly Drum. I've seen that put in some work before. I've been swept by that in my draft league career before. So it definitely has some utility. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's definitely not bad at all. There's just other grass fighting types I would rather draft. It's typically not drafted anyway, so I don't draft it very often, obviously. Pangoro. Pangoro is a really strong wall breaker in a lot of instances. I'm going to go ahead and put it right here in C tier. There's a lot of C tier fighting types. It's a really strong wall breaker. Fighting plus Dark is an incredible offensive typing, as we'll talk a little bit more about in the future. But also gets great coverage for fairies like Gunk Shot. It can Parting Shot around for momentum. It's just a little bit slow and not the bulkiest thing in the world, especially considering it's your Dark type. I'd rather have Scrafty before I ever drafted Pangoro personally. But again, it's still a very strong wall breaker, and I think with a Choice Band, this thing is really, really tough to deal with, and it's really goddamn strong. So, very solid Pokemon overall. Sorry, what did I just get? Okay. Yeah, very, very solid Pokemon. Okay. Next up, we have... Where did we leave off? Hawlucha. I'm going to go ahead and put Hawlucha at the bottom of A tier, solely because I know the potential that it has, and I know that it can win games on its own if positioned right and things are sufficiently chipped. I've kind of talked about Hawlucha before in the sense that I think it's a bit overrated in the sense that you're kind of playing 5v6 or even 4v6 in some instances, because typically you're going to pair it up with a terrain setter, and you kind of have to chip down the checks you need Hawlucha to be able to kill at +2 beforehand. Then you have to position into Swords Dance, and then you have to win the game. So it's really sitting in the back until all of the conditions are met for it to sweep, whereas other Pokemons that are set up sweepers can still be used throughout the game to wear down their own checks and things like that. Once you come in, pop your Burden, it's time to go, or when you switch out, it's gone. So I think that's a really important aspect of Hawlucha to note, but I do think it has good utility otherwise with like Mold Breaker, Scarf sets, Mold Breaker setup sets to like break through Clef. I've seen SD Mold Breaker Brave Bird and just like Nuka Clef before, which is really cool. Going through it's unaware. But overall, I think Hawlucha is a little bit overrated, but it still definitely has a lot of potential. I think it is really good against newer players too, which is a cool thing to kind of add on. Okay, we're going to talk about a really bad fighting type really quick. One that Josh really likes in Crabominable. It's going to go in D tier. Now, under like Trick Room or something like that, this thing can be really scary. And its offensive typing and ice fighting is really strong. It's just very slow. It's not very bulky. It's very exploitable. So it's going to go down in D tier. There's not much else to say, unfortunately. Next up, we have a Pokemon I really like in Bewear. I'm going to put Bewear up here in C tier. This thing with Fluffy is a Fizdef menace. I have used this to 1v1 this guy up here before with Bulk Up Protect variants, which is really cool. Normal plus Fighting, again, is an unresisted stab typing outside of Ghost, but you do have, I think, ways of hitting Ghost, right? I know you get Payback at least, but I'm hoping you get something a little bit better, like Throat Chop or something. Dark type. You get Darkest Lariat, which is definitely really solid. So you can't hit Ghost, so that plus Normal and Fighting hits everything neutrally, which is really, really solid. And yeah, it's just a very bulky Pokemon. I like it with an AV. I like it as just a Fizdef Rocky Helmet Mon. I like it as a Choice Band Mon, things like that. So Beware is pretty cool. 125 attack. I think strong too, man. So it's a great Mon. Okay. Next up, we have Passimian. Passimian is like Primate, but better. We're gonna go ahead and put Passimian probably, honestly, at the top of C tier. It's a really solid Pokemon. It can U-turn around, it gets knockoff, it has a decent speed tier, and what? Passimian. What is C tier? An 80, so very similar to something like Primate, or slower than Primate, but it's a lot bulkier. It has 100 HP, 90 defense, 60 speed F. So with an AV, it can be decently bulky. You can U-turn around, like I said. You can knock things off, which is infinitely more valuable than having Throat Chop as an option. And you get a bunch of cool coverage options from like Earthquake, Seed Bomb, Shadow. You get Shadow Ball and not Claw. That's really weird. Gunk Shot is the one I was thinking, which is a really cool option. And yeah, it's an overall really, really solid Pokemon. I don't think it gets any setup options like Swords Dance or Bulk Up. Oh, it does get Bulk Up. So yeah, really solid Pokemon. I like it. Okay. Next up, Kommo-o. I'm going to go ahead and put Kommo-o up here in A tier. I know a lot of people don't like Kommo-o. I love it. It gets so many setup options. Swords Dance, Dragon Dance, Bulk Up, Iron Defense, Autotomize, Clanger, Soul. You can set up and win the game in many ways. It can be very defensive with like Iron Defense Body Press sets and like Stealth Rock, like that. It can Toxic, or it can be that Blitz all-out offense bomb that you can kind of facilitate and set up an endgame for. So it's a really solid Pokemon, and it's really hard to prep for, in my opinion. And I think it's a lot better than some people give it credit for. Buzzwole. Oh, big Buzzingtons. After BBL, this thing's gotta move up. Whether it be its Fizdef wall capabilities, just eating every physical hit under the sun. You think you have your weird Aerial Ace tech for it? No, it's taking 35% because he's Buzzwole. Or whether you be offensive Life Orb because your opponent just doesn't switch into Fighting plus Bug plus all the great coverage and Elemental Punches and Rock coverage that you have. This Pokemon is amazing. It's really strong. It looks really cool, and I'm excited for it to be in Unite. I'm gonna play the shit out of it in Unite. I think I'm gonna main it. So it's a great Pokemon. I've loved using it. I think it's definitely worth trying out. Okay, now we're in the final gen. We are in Generation 8. I don't think I've missed anything. If I have, I'm gonna yell that in the comments again, but that's life, right? Next up, we have Grapploct. I almost said Octolock, which is its ability. This thing is very weird. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in D tier, right? I don't think anybody's gonna complain if I put this thing in D tier. I'm actually gonna put it right down here. I know that it has access to Technician, which is cool, but it doesn't really get any moves that really take advantage of that, I suppose. Does it get Aqua Jet? No, it doesn't. Now, I know it's not a water type, which damn shame it's not, because water fighting is a great offensive typing, and I would love for this thing to get that or make it a lot better. I'm really trying to see what moves it takes advantage of. It doesn't. I mean, I guess it can be the Lumber. I think this thing's like main niche is being Octolock, which is basically a move that traps in your opponent as well as lowering their defenses. Yeah, their defense and their Spadef by 1 each turn, which is definitely a cool option. That plus like Bulk Up. It can really be annoying for like stall. But overall, this Pokemon kind of sucks. I'm gonna put it in D tier. Maybe decent with an AV, but I don't see why we would ever draft this over another fighting type. I'll keep it a buck. Maybe tell me otherwise, but I don't know, not for me. Surfetch, I'm gonna put Surfetch bottom C tier purely because of its walling or its wall breaking capabilities. Being this fighting type with Scrafty is always a really, really valuable thing for me. So Surfetch can do that, avoiding Intimidate as well as avoiding immunities altogether. Just clicking Banded Close Combat, which can be really cool. It gets First Impression for priority. It also gets Knock Off and Leaf Blade and a bunch of cool options, but it's very slow and it's not very bulky. So I think that's where it really falls flat. Only 65 base speed and then 62, 95, 82 bulk isn't the best. So yeah, it's kind of tough justifying drafting it, personally, in my opinion. This Pokemon, you get the prize for the worst. Now, he has an amazing design. I love Falinks. I think, like, the Spartan Falinks, I guess, is such a cool design idea, especially for bugs. But it's just really bad. It's really slow. It's not very strong. Even with its really awesome move and no retreat, you can't stack it, I don't believe, and it's just not strong enough and fast enough to really shoot through teams or do anything of note, in my opinion. Defiance cool ability, Battle Armor too, but it just does not have the stats to back up what you want to do with it. I think they're a little too scared for that. Okay. Now, we have 3 really good Pokemon to close it out. We have Zamazenta, who is going to go in S tier up here. I really like Zama, and in National Dex Leagues, at the very least, it is being allowed a lot more. It's kind of just commonplace to allow Zamazenta. It's really bulky. I think it really falls flat in the damage aspect of things because it can't boost its attack with Swords Dance. It can only do so with Howl. It has no recovery. It has no item is the big thing. So you can't boost that with a Life Orb. You can't boost it with a Ban. You can't get passive recovery and leftovers or anything like that. You're fortunate that Buster Shield was a little bit unfortunate. The thing on balance and stall teams, this thing is a demon and really tough to deal with. So I really like Zama. I definitely think it's a top tier Pokemon in Galar decks, but I do think another fighting type is better. And that's going to be Urshifu Single Strike. I've used this thing many times. I've won a championship with this recently. It's so brain dead. Fighting plus Dark with the good speed tier that it has in 97, as well as the ridiculously spammable Wicked Blow, which is basically Dark type close combat that always crits. Well, it's not close combat power at first. It's like 80 base power, and then it always crits. Ridiculously spammable. You can U-turn around, you can close combat, you have coverage for fairies, but really, just click Wicked Blow until they're in 2-hit KO range, or click U-turn with hazards until they're in 2-hit KO range. Go into your Gengar, your Nidoking, whatever breaker you drafted alongside Urshifu, and do some damn work. This thing is amazing. I love it to death. It's a really good Pokemon, and borderline bannable in a lot of leagues. Now, they don't have an Urshifu Rapid Strike on this tier list, so I'm just going to use the G-Max, right? Urshifu Rapid is also going to come up here. I think I'm actually going to put it in A tier above Keldeo. Same typing offensively, but I really like that the offensive utility that Urshifu Rapid Strike, kind of gives. Whether it be Surging Strikes being a really spammable move, got to be kind of careful of Helmet, but that plus Close Combat and U-turn, Aqua Jet, Ice Punch, things like that. This thing's really tough to switch into, whether it be Banded or Scarfed or Life Orb, Protective Pads to avoid that stuff. AV, even I've run before, so it can be really solid offensively. It's a really great Pokemon. Okay, kind of rushed there towards the end, but if you can't tell, I'm winded, I'm tired, I work at 9 in the morning, so I'm gonna jump off and head to bed. Let me know what you guys think of our tier list right here. I think it's pretty good, but I know I had some hot takes, right? Like my boy Hariyama right here up in B tier. But hey, man, you gotta find value where it's at in Draft League. That's kind of the whole point of it, whole point of the format, in my opinion. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please again drop a like as well as sub to the channel. We're almost to 1,000. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching again. See you guys next time. Later.